welcome back. So I enjoyed watching Fear Thy Neighbor so much the other day when I brought you my review of episode 4 or 6. I can't remember which episode that was. So I decided today I was going to watch another episode of Fear Thy Neighbor, and why not share it with you guys? So we're back with a little more true crime, and we're going to review Fear Thy Neighbor season 6 episode 5. And if you haven't already subscribed, please subscribe now. And don't forget to hit the notification bell so that you can always be notified when I post new content. So this episode of Fear Thy Neighbor takes place in a town in Ohio called Old Brooklyn, Ohio, which is like a suburb or just outside of Cleveland, Ohio. So it all starts back in 2003 when a new couple moves into the neighborhood. But of course, you know how that is on Fear Thy Neighbor. It's always the newbies that move into the neighborhood, and then all of a sudden some kind of craziness goes on. Either the new people hate the old people, or the old people can't stand the new people. And it's always some sort of drama. I am thankful that I have decent neighbors. My only problem is the cute dog next door keeps pooping in my yard, and I like to talk to them about it. But now that I've watched these episodes of Fear Thy Neighbor, I won't be. That dog can continue to use my backyard. It all starts with Terrence and Regina Hough moving into the neighborhood on Skyland Drive. Terrence is a firefighter and Regina is a stay-at-home mom to their son. Directly across the street from the Houghs, there's a detective. His name is Joe, and he is very happy to see that a fellow essential worker has moved in across the street. You know, normally firefighters and police officers definitely get along. They work together in a lot of ways, and so he was happy to see Terrence move into the neighborhood. Right directly next door to Terrence is Roland Venture, which I hope I am saying his name right. Roland lives next door. He's been living there for about 20 years with his sons, John and Jacob. John and Jacob are teenagers. They live there with their father, who is a single father. His wife passed away some time ago. Roland is a single dad, and he works for a steel mill company, and he's away from home quite a bit. However, his sons are teenagers, and they're, of age where they could be left at home. Me personally, I am a mom of a teen, and I don't think that my son and his friends are any different than John and Jacob. John and Jacob like to play basketball. They like to listen to loud music. They like to have friends over, when their parents aren't home. They just like to have a great time. So what's good for them is not good for the Houghs. The Houghs have moved in, and they are not okay with the kids playing basketball and having music loud. That's just not their thought of being peaceful. A lot of times the boys like to play basketball late into the night, and they have the music going, and it just was not okay with Terrence Hough. Terrence Hough believes, hey, I live here and I want silence. So he goes out and he lets the kids know it's a little too loud. Turn your music down. I would appreciate it. And, he doesn't want them playing basketball. The kids agree and say, okay, they're sorry. Well, this continues to go on. I mean, this went on from 2003 to 2007, with him and his wife getting more and more angry at the boys for playing basketball and playing music, to the point where Terrence goes to Joe, the detective from across the street, and he says, aren't you sick of this noise? Don't you hate them playing basketball? And Joe says, no. Me and the neighbors are used to it. They are teenage boys. Teenage boys like to play basketball, and basketball is sometimes loud. It doesn't bother anyone else. Now, I can tell you, my neighbors, they all have kids. The kids are of all ages. The kids like to do all kinds of things. Whether it's football, baseball, soccer, hockey, basketball, it does not matter. These kids are out there doing it. And I don't mind the noise, but clearly Terrence and Regina had a problem with it. Sometimes the boys' ball would end up in Mr. Hough's yard. One of the kids actually went into his yard to get their basketball back, and Mr. Hough told them, you are not allowed in my yard. I don't know about you, but most neighbors, if the kids' balls end up in their yard, they're usually okay with the kids just coming into the yard real quick to get their ball, as long as it's not interfering with a pet. You know, if you've got a dog in your backyard and you don't want someone to get bitten or something like that, of course you wouldn't want the kids back there. But if it's just to run in real quick, grab your ball and leave, I don't know what the problem was, but it was a problem for Terrence. He let those kids know that under no circumstances are they allowed to come back in his yard. They apologized and said it wouldn't happen again. However, it continued to happen to the point where Terrence pretty much threatened them, stay the hell out of his yard, and he took their ball. After a while, Terrence and his wife decided to start calling the police on the boys. They didn't appreciate the basketball, they didn't appreciate friends over, they didn't appreciate music at all. So they continued to call the cops multiple times. The cops would show up, they would tell the kids, hey, turn down the music, stop playing basketball for the evening, you know, your neighbors don't like it. The kids would stop and go on. After a while, the kids were so used to the police being called on them that they started turning the music down as soon as they saw the cop car turn on the street, and they started hiding their drinks because they were underage drinking. And by the time the cop pulled up in the driveway, it was totally silent. By then, Terry and Regina are absolutely pissed. The police, you took too long. You know, the cops let Terry and Regina know. Here in the city of Cleveland and Old Brooklyn, we have high crime priority, and calling for a noise complaint is the least of our worries. You're going to be on the lowest of the priority list, and we get here when we get here. That was not okay with Regina or with Terrence. At one point, Roland, the boy's father, pulled the boys to the side, and he explained to them that even though they don't like Mr. Hough, they have to respect Mr. Hough. Please be quiet, keep your music down, and don't play basketball too often or too long. Let the man have his peace and quiet. The boys agreed. The boys may have agreed, but they didn't stop. They continued to play their music loud. They continued to play basketball. They continued to have friends over. And Gina and Terrence started to think that the boys were doing it on purpose. They felt that the music was getting louder and louder, and that they didn't care that they were irritating the Hough family. So they seriously started taking this personally. One night, the noise was too loud for Terrence. Terrence comes out of his house, pushes a teenager to the side, and storms into their home. He finds Josh and John and threatens them to be quiet, letting them know that they are absolutely disrespectful. Well, their father Roland shows up, and Roland asks Mr. Hough, "What are you doing in my house? No matter what these kids are doing, you have absolutely no right to be in my house threatening my kids, so get the hell out." So Terrence, pissed off, he leaves. Roland, the kid's father, he tells everyone that they have to go home, and he has another discussion with his sons about basketball, loud music, and friends over. Again, they tell him, "Okay, Dad, we'll try to be more respectful to Mr. Hough." Mr. Hough is so ticked off that at one point he actually takes a knife to the boys' basketball. Mrs. Hough then buys the boys a new ball in hopes of being a good neighbor and trying to bring some peace. But that doesn't work. So the boys and Roland go to talk to Joe, the detective, and ask Joe what can they do about Mr. Hough and all the calls to the police and him being so upset with them over something as simple as the boys playing music and playing basketball out in their own driveway. Joe tells them to try to ignore Mr. Hough. Sooner or later, it will die down. I don't think so. No. You have called the police so many times. You barged into the people's house, and they still won't turn the music all the way down, and they still keep playing basketball. No, I don't think it's going to die down. Not at all. This is not looking good. So after several years of this back and forth, Jacob goes off to college. When Jacob goes off to college, the Houghs are absolutely excited. They know the noise is going to go away. And they were right for a while. But then it was time for college breaks. You know, colleges have breaks and the kids come home. So when Jacob came home, all his other college friends came home too. And the party was back at Jacob and John's house. And Terrence was not all right. The Houghs were on 110. The noise is back. We are not okay with this. So here goes the calling the police again. The Houghs end up having a new baby. So Terrence gets a second job. So he's a firefighter, but then he gets a second job as a security guard to make ends meet. You know, Pampers cost a lot. So he decides that being the security guard, of course, he has to be armed. He's going to take some shooting classes and get his certification. While he's taking his shooting classes and getting his certification, he meets a nice man named Donnie Walsh. Donnie is also just completed the police academy, and he's applying for different police departments, and he also wants to be able to keep his conceal and carry. So they're both learning and shooting and practicing at the same place. Donnie thinks that Mr. Hough is hilarious. He thinks he's funny, he thinks he's a nice guy, and he knows that he is one hell of a shot. He has learned quite a bit from Mr. Hough. The whole time that Donnie and Terrence are getting to know each other, Terrence is telling Donnie about these evil, loud, snotty-nosed teenagers who live next door to him. Now, this whole time, Donnie has not asked Terrence where he lives, and Terrence has not asked Donnie where he lives. So Donnie has no idea that Terrence is actually talking about his best friend, Jacob, and Donnie also lives in the neighborhood. But he has no clue that Terrence is losing his mind over his friends. So at one point, Roland, the boy's father, decides to go and talk to Terrence man to man. He says, "Hey, what's going on? I need you to stop harassing my kids. I really need you to leave my boys alone." And Terrence approaches him and says, "Are you threatening me?" Roland is completely taken off guard, and he's like, "Threatening you? Why would I do that?" And that does not sit well with Terrence, because Terrence is thinking clearly Roland stepping to him to ask him nicely to leave his sons alone and stop harassing these kids by calling the police all the time and threatening them was a threat to him. No, it's just me coming to you as a man saying, "Please leave my kids alone." Terrence was not here for that. Terrence is walking the slow line of crazy. He decides that he is going to plant guns all over the house. Now here you are with a son and a toddler. What are you doing with guns all over the house? Even his wife was confused as to why he is planting guns all over the house that are not in safe places when you have children. He's planting these guns all over the house because you never know. These teenagers these days. What? The teenagers these days who just play basketball in the driveway and try to drink when their dad's not home with a little music? I don't think they're going to hurt you, sir. So everything completely gets screwed when the boys are outside having a good time playing music, and Terrence comes outside to scream at them and sees Donnie at their house. He wants to know, what the hell is Donnie doing there? Does Donnie know these people? And Donnie's looking at him. He's like, "Terrence, are these the neighbors you were talking about?" And he's looking at Donnie all crazy, and he's like, "These are my friends." He is completely pissed off. Donnie is no longer his friend. How dare you talk to these noisy people next door? And he just runs off back to his house. Now we come to July 4th, 2007. Now remember, this has been going on since 2003. July 4th, 2007 comes around, and everybody knows that the 4th of July is a big party. The 4th of July is a loud situation. I think the 4th of July is the loudest holiday that we have. People get real crazy on the 4th of July, and people love it. We're celebrating. Detective Joe from across the street realizes that, oh my gosh, it's a noisy holiday, so he goes over to see Terrence. He asks Terrence, he says, "Hey, I know the noise and everything bothers you, Maybe you and your family should go to a hotel or something, just to get away from all the noise, the singing, the dancing, the partying. And he says, you should go over to them and tell them that they should go somewhere. Joe goes on back to his house because he knows there is no talking to this man, no talking to him at all. His wife, on the other hand, Regina, she packs up the kids and heads off to Grandma's house. She says, hey, I'm going to go watch the fireworks over at Grandma's. I'm going to have a little picnic. We're going to play with the kids. She was just going somewhere so she can get her nerves right and play with the kids. But no, Terrence is going to stay home. He's going to endure. Regina and the kids make it back home at about 10:30 p.m. When she gets home, the neighborhood is absolutely silent. Nobody's making noise. There is, some noise because some neighbors are having backyard barbecues, but they're real low key. There's no fireworks. You can just hear people talking, a little light music. And then John and Jacob come home. And when they come home, they bring the noise. They bring the crowd. They bring all their friends. They start letting off fireworks. They let off fireworks for an entire 45 minutes. When the fireworks die down, Terrence has snapped. He has completely snapped. It is complete silence. There is no fireworks going on at all. And Terrence has lost every ounce of sense that he has left. Out of nowhere, Terrence emerges from his house at about midnight on the 5th of July, and he has his gun drawn and it's aimed right at Jacob. And Jacob says, what are you gonna do? Shoot me? And he says, yeah, really loud, and boom. He shoots Jacob. Jacob falls to the ground. He stands over top of him and shoots him 2 more times. Then he kills Bruce Anderson, who's 30 years old. He's a friend of theirs and he's just there for the party. After he kills Bruce, he kills Catherine Roseby. She's 26 years old and she's also there for the party. Then he squares up and aims to shoot another lady. When his friend Danny sees him squaring up to shoot this woman, the woman actually happens to be Danny's fiance. He jumps in front of her to save her and gets shot in the arm. Danny, the guy who just finished police academy, who's going out to try to be a cop, gets shot so bad in his arm he has to have several surgeries and he can no longer apply for any police jobs. He is considered to have a disability, so the police department will never be able to hire him as an officer. Throughout the time that he's shooting, people are screaming, people are running, and every time he shoots somebody, he screams out, yeah! Yeah, every single time. To this day, Danny says that he dreams and has nightmares about that. And every time he can hear, yeah, ringing in his ear like it just happened. Terrence goes back into his house, sits down at his kitchen table, and tells his wife, I killed them all. What? While these shots are going off and he's killing the people next door, other neighbors think it's fireworks. It wasn't until everything was almost completely over that Detective Joe, who was in his backyard having a barbecue with his friends, minding his own business, actually put an ear to it and said, oh my God, that is not fireworks, that is gunshots. He runs across the street. He's able to get into the Hough's home and detain Mr. Hough until the police get there. Terrence is sentenced to life in prison without the possibility of parole. And I was thinking, when they went to court, right after the judge said you are sentenced to life in prison without the possibility of parole, everyone in that courtroom should have said, yeah! I mean, really? There were so many things that he could have done. Number 1, you could have just moved. Number 2, you could have got you some headphones. Number 3, you could have went over to those people's house, acted as if you had some sense, and said, Roland, can I sit down and have a talk with you, John, and Jacob, and explain to them how important as a firefighter it is for you to have rest, how important it is for you to get sleep and for your family to have sleep, especially your children. You could have asked them, hey, could we make a deal that after 9 o'clock, you don't play basketball in the front and you don't play your music really loud? Or, hey, how about if you do have a whole bunch of people over or you're playing music, you do it inside of your house? Or you could have just took these people to court for noise pollution or something. You had so many options. You did not have to go in there and gun down half the damn people at the party. You took 3 innocent young lives over noise? Now, I do understand that this noise went on from 2003 to 2007, and that can cause people to lose it. I don't like a lot of noise. Everybody who knows me knows I do not like a lot of noise. But if it's children making the noise, I can deal with it. I can totally deal with it. That's what kids do. They eat everything and they make a lot of noise. Not only that, they break stuff. Kids do that. Let them do it. During sentencing, the judge asked Mr. Hough if he had anything to say. He said, "I'd like to say I'm sorry, Your Honor." The judge says, "Well, do you want to say anything else?" He shakes his head no, with no emotion whatsoever. Well, we don't accept your apology. We really don't. Noise is not a reason to kill anybody. I just can't believe it. Jacob and his father, Roland, actually sued the Houghs in civil court for wrongful death, and they were rewarded $3 million. They will never see a dime of that $3 million because Mr. Hough is in jail, and he will be for the remainder of his natural life. And to the Roseby, Anderson, and the Venture family, I am so deeply sorry. My heart goes out to all of you. I am still completely shocked that someone would murder 3 people in cold blood while screaming, yeah, over the fact that you did not appreciate loud music, laughter, dancing, and basketball next door to you, when there were so many opportunities that you had to do something different. I am truly, truly sorry for this family. And I'm glad that he's spending the rest of his life in jail because that's where he deserves to be. And for the petty part of me, I wish that there was some kind of ruling in court where the judge said, I would like to have loud music played in his cell 24 hours a day. How dare you get any peace? They don't get their family. But until next time, bye.